There is a sentence more dangerous than "I hate you." It is quieter. It sounds like this. I am tired. Not tired from work, tired of trying, tired of feeling invisible. That sentence has ended more relationships than any argument ever could. And right now, someone you know is thinking it. Maybe you are thinking it too. Here is what no one tells you about love. It rarely dies in a single dramatic moment. It fades, slowly, quietly, in the spaces between two people who stopped reaching for each other. So before you keep scrolling, I want to ask you something. Have you ever sat right next to the person you love, close enough to touch them, and felt completely, utterly alone? Take a moment with that question, because what comes next might change everything. Today, you are going to follow the real story of two people named Daniel and Sarah, married for 8 years. Good people, loving people, people who never stopped caring about each other, yet somehow ended up feeling like strangers sharing the same roof. Their story did not fall apart because of one dramatic betrayal, no affair, no explosive argument, no single moment you could point to and say, that is where it broke. It broke in the silence. In the small, invisible moments that piled up over years, until the weight became unbearable. By the end of the next 20 minutes, you will understand exactly why love fades, how emotional neglect quietly takes root without either person realizing it, and most importantly, how couples can find their way back to each other before it is truly too late. Meet Daniel and Sarah. 8 years married, 2 kids, 1 mortgage, and a life that looks perfectly fine from the outside. Daniel spends his days buried in project management, answering emails before sunrise and finishing reports long after dinner. Sarah holds everything else together, balancing a part-time job while managing school pickups, homework, and bedtime routines that never quite go smoothly. Their mornings are a blur of packed lunches and lost shoes. Their evenings are heavy with exhaustion. Neither of them has the energy to explain. They share a home, a bed, a family, and a calendar packed with responsibilities. But somewhere between the school runs and the overdue bills, they stopped truly sharing themselves. Their life is not broken. It is quietly fading, like a song playing in another room that you can barely hear anymore. Picture this. It is a Tuesday evening. Dinner is on the table. The kids are finally asleep, and the house is still for the first time all day. Daniel and Sarah sit across from each other, phones face down, not out of intention, just out of habit. They eat in silence. But this is not the comfortable kind of silence that settles between two people who feel safe together. This is something heavier, something that presses down on the chest. Sarah looks up twice, opening her mouth slightly, wanting to say something, anything. But the words do not come. Daniel stares at his plate, somewhere far away inside his own mind. And here is what makes this moment so devastating. This is not a fight. This is something quieter and far more dangerous. This is two people who have forgotten how to begin. The house is finally still. Daniel drifted off mid-sentence, the television still murmuring softly in the background, and Sarah quietly slipped away. Not far, just to the bathroom. She sits on the cold tile floor with the light off. She is not crying. There is no dramatic breakdown, just silence. Just her, alone with her thoughts. The narrator speaks gently here. She is not angry at Daniel. She is grieving the version of them that used to stay up until 2 in the morning, just talking about everything and nothing. Grieving the version of Daniel who used to reach for her hand without even thinking about it. It was effortless once, natural, real. She closes her eyes, and in the darkness, barely above a whisper, she asks the question that has been living in her chest for months. When did we become strangers? But now, let us step into Daniel's world, because he deserves that same compassion. Daniel is not the villain of this story. He is not cold, not careless, not indifferent. He is exhausted. Quietly, invisibly drowning beneath the weight of providing, performing, and holding everything together without ever being asked if he is okay. He notices Sarah pulling away. He feels the distance growing, but in his mind, her silence reads as disappointment, as proof that he is failing her. So what does he do? He works harder, stays quieter, builds a wall, not out of cruelty, but out of shame. And here is what makes this so heartbreaking. This is one of the most common and most misunderstood patterns in relationships. Two people hurting each other, not out of hatred, but out of fear. Fear of not being enough. Both suffering, both alone, together. Here is where the story of Daniel and Sarah connects to something researchers have studied for decades. Most relationships do not end because of one catastrophic event. They end because of what researchers call emotional erosion, the slow wearing away of connection through repeated small moments of disconnection. Relationship psychologist Dr. John Gottman studied thousands of couples over 40 years and found something that might surprise you. Couples who eventually divorce do not necessarily fight more than happy couples. What separates them is something quieter. They show less positive connection during ordinary everyday moments. Let that land for a second. It is not the big fights that destroy love. It is the small silences, the missed glances, the conversations that never happened, the questions never asked, the hand never reached for. That Tuesday night dinner between Daniel and Sarah was not a crisis. It was erosion. And erosion, by its very nature, happens so slowly you barely notice until everything has worn away. Picture this. Sarah is setting plates down, still buzzing from something that happened at work today. She turns to Daniel and starts sharing, her voice carrying that rare spark of genuine excitement. Daniel responds with a distracted, eyes locked on his phone screen. Sarah slows, stops mid-sentence, waits. He never looks up. She finishes dinner quietly, alone inside her own thoughts, while sitting right beside him. The narrator names what just happened. This is called a missed bid for connection, a term straight from relationship psychology. A bid is any moment one partner reaches out emotionally, seeking acknowledgement, warmth, or simply to be heard. When the other partner turns away, even unintentionally, a small, invisible crack forms in the foundation between them. It does not feel dramatic in the moment. It rarely does. But over 8 years, those small cracks do not stay small. They accumulate silently, steadily, until one day they become walls neither person remembers building. And here is where something quietly devastating was happening beneath the surface of their daily life. Sarah's love language was words of affirmation and quality time. She needed to hear it, to feel it, to be looked at and truly seen. Daniel's love language was acts of service. He expressed love through doing, fixing the leaking tap, working overtime to keep the bills paid, managing every logistical detail of their shared life without complaint. In his mind, every repaired shelf was a love letter. Every extra shift was devotion made visible. But Sarah did not feel loved by a fixed tap. She felt loved when Daniel looked at her and said, "I see you. I appreciate you. You matter to me." Neither of them was wrong, but neither of them knew how the other actually received love. And so they were both giving everything and both starving at the same time. Then came their 8th wedding anniversary. Daniel had not forgotten because he stopped caring. He had been buried under a brutal work deadline for 3 weeks, running on coffee and adrenaline, barely remembering what day it was. Sarah had quietly planned something small, nothing extravagant, just candles on the dining table, their song playing softly through the kitchen speaker, a home-cooked meal, and the hope of one evening that felt like them again. She waited. He came home late, apologized briefly, the kind of apology that lives more in the mouth than the heart. And then he fell asleep on the couch before she could even respond. Sarah walked back to the dining table alone, and she blew out the candles one by one in the dark. The narrator does not need to raise its voice here. Sometimes the most heartbreaking moments in a relationship are not the screaming matches. They are the candles you blow out alone. The following morning, something shifts, but not in the way you might expect. Sarah does not explode. She does not cry. She does not confront Daniel over breakfast with 8 years of accumulated pain. She simply becomes quiet. But it is a different kind of quiet now, a final kind. She starts making plans in her mind, not for revenge, not for drama, but for survival. This is what emotional withdrawal looks like, and psychologists describe it as one of the most misunderstood moments in a relationship, because from the outside, it can look like peace, like acceptance, like things are finally calming down. But here is the painful truth. When someone stops fighting, stops complaining, stops reacting entirely, it does not mean they are okay. It does not mean they have forgiven and moved forward. It means they have stopped believing things will ever change. And that silence is far more dangerous than any argument. One evening, something shifts. Sarah does not scream. She does not cry. She simply speaks. Her voice is calm, almost frighteningly so, but every word carries 8 years of unspoken weight. She looks at Daniel and says, "I do not need you to be perfect. I just need you to be present. I have been standing right next to you for years, and I have never felt more alone in my life." Daniel goes completely still. The narrator pauses here, lets the silence sit, lets it breathe, then speaks softly. He had no idea. He genuinely believed he was doing everything right. He thought love meant providing, solving, delivering. He worked harder so she could worry less. He stayed quieter so arguments would not start. But he never realized that what she needed was not solutions. She needed him to simply show up, not just physically, emotionally. Something breaks open inside Daniel in that moment. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way a window cracks before it shatters. The narrator describes it as quiet devastation, followed by unexpected clarity. He realizes he has been so afraid of failing her that he stopped actually being with her. Present in the house, absent in the relationship. And there is a profound difference between those two things. Psychologists call this emotional unavailability. And here is what most people misunderstand about it. It is rarely rooted in lack of love. More often, it grows from unprocessed fear, deep shame, or childhood attachment wounds that never fully healed. Daniel grew up in a home where emotions were never discussed. Feelings were inconvenient. Vulnerability was weakness. He learned early that love meant doing, not feeling, providing, not opening up. And that one quiet belief, absorbed in childhood, had been slowly suffocating his marriage without either of them fully understanding why. If you have ever felt like Daniel, always doing, always providing, always moving, but never truly connecting, this is for you. And if you have ever felt like Sarah, standing in a room full of love but feeling completely unseen, this is for you too. Every lasting relationship is built on one invisible foundation: emotional safety. Not romance, not compatibility, not even communication. Emotional safety. It means your partner can express their truth, their fears, their disappointments, their joy, without fear of being dismissed, mocked, or ignored. It means vulnerability is welcomed, not weaponized. Without emotional safety, something quiet and devastating begins to happen. Communication shuts down. Walls go up, brick by brick, silence by silence. And love, that same love that once felt unshakable, slowly suffocates in the very silence that was supposed to feel safe. So what can you actually do starting today? The first tool is the daily check-in. And before you picture a structured sit-down meeting, let me be clear. This is not about discussing bills or school pickups or weekend plans. This is 2 minutes, just 2, where you look at your partner and genuinely ask, how are you really feeling today? What do you need from me right now? That is it. Simple. But most couples have not done it in years. The second tool is learning to listen without immediately defending. When your partner expresses pain, every instinct in your body wants to explain yourself, justify your actions, or correct the record. But here is what they actually need first. They need to feel heard. So before you defend yourself, try saying, "I hear you, and I am sorry you felt that way." Those words alone can completely change the direction of a conversation. And so the healing begins. But the narrator is careful here, because healing is not a highlight reel. Daniel does not transform overnight. He starts small. He puts his phone away during dinner. He asks Sarah about her day and actually listens, not waiting for his turn to speak, but truly listening. One morning, he leaves a note on the kitchen counter. It simply says, "I see you, and I am grateful for you." Sarah finds it. She reads it twice. She does not immediately soften. She is cautious. And that caution is not coldness, it is wisdom. Hurt people do not heal in a single gesture. But she notices. And noticing is where reconnection begins. The narrator pauses here to remind viewers of something important. Healing in a relationship is not a moment. It is a daily decision made by two imperfect people choosing each other again and again. And here is the second mistake that quietly destroys so many relationships. Many couples wait for a grand romantic gesture to fix what daily neglect has broken. A vacation, a surprise anniversary dinner, a dramatic declaration of love. They believe one big moment will erase months of emotional distance. But the truth is that relationships are not saved by grand gestures. They are saved by consistent small ones. A text that simply says, "I was thinking of you." A hand held during a stressful moment, remembering how your partner takes their coffee, laughing together about something completely silly. These micro moments of connection are what build the emotional bank account of a relationship. Relationship researchers describe it exactly this way. When that account is full, couples can survive almost anything: disagreements, hardships, even painful seasons of distance. But when that account runs empty, even the smallest conflict begins to feel catastrophic, like the entire relationship is falling apart. Weeks pass in the story of Daniel and Sarah, and then something remarkable happens. They begin couples therapy, not because their relationship is shattered beyond repair, but because they are finally brave enough to admit they need help. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. The narrator wants to say this clearly. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you love your relationship more than you love your pride. In therapy, Daniel and Sarah learn each other's attachment styles for the very first time. They learn why Daniel shuts down when conflict arises and why Sarah moves toward it, pursuing connection even when it pushes him further away. They learn that these patterns are not personal attacks aimed at each other. They are survival strategies, quietly built around old wounds from long before they ever met. And understanding that changes absolutely everything. Months later, on an ordinary evening, Daniel and Sarah sit together on their back porch. The kids are finally asleep. There are no phones, no television, no noise filling the silence between them. Just the soft sounds of the night and the presence of each other. Daniel reaches over and takes Sarah's hand, not because he planned it, not because therapy told him to, just because it felt right. She looks at him. He looks at her. And for the first time in years, neither of them feels alone. The narrator speaks softly now. They are not the same couple they were 8 years ago. They are something better. Something earned through honesty, through pain, through choosing each other even when it was hard. Two people who stayed, who grew, who repaired what was broken, and who learned to love more truthfully than before. Love does not disappear overnight. It fades quietly, in the small moments when couples stop choosing each other. In the distracted dinners, the forgotten anniversaries, the conversations that never happened. The strongest relationships are not the ones that never break. They are the ones that break and are repaired with honesty, patience, and courage. Just like Daniel and Sarah. They did not find their way back through perfection. They found it through presence. If you take nothing else from this story, take this. The person beside you is not asking for perfection. They are asking to feel important again. Think of one person in your life who needs to hear this today. Send this to them. And ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you truly made someone you love feel completely, undeniably seen? That question might change everything.